Tom Foley is in. The 2010 GOP nominee wants a rematch with Governor Malloy. So what does this mean for the race? We'll ask two men who ran for governor 4 years ago, Ned Lamont and Oz Griebel. Also, Metro North complaints are piling up. We'll meet a local man who's now taking action. Plus, they've received millions of dollars from the state. So what is Back 9 doing with your money? And our flashback 20 years ago, Denise and Dennis during the Olympics. Ugly sweaters and all. All straight ahead on this Groundhog Day as we look at the old State House in Hartford, February 2nd, 2014.
This is Face the State with Dennis House, Connecticut's most watched local political program.
Good morning. Less than 4 months until the conventions, and the race for governor is starting to firm up a bit. Governor Malloy has not announced his re-election plans yet, but he is expected to run. The Republican field looks like this now that Tom Foley has made it official. All but State Senator Tony Boucher have announced they are in. And with us today, two men who ran for governor the last go-around, Democrat Ned Lamont and Republican Oz Griebel. Gentlemen, good to see you back in the program together. What is the tough thing right now for candidates after they announce at the beginning of the year, and there's still a long slog ahead, what do they have to do? We'll begin with you, Mr. Lamont.
I think they have to do two things, Dan. It's good to see you again, by the way.
Nice to see
and
you.
Oz, good to be with you.
It was a pleasure, Dan.
It's like the old days in 2010.
We've been here before. I think the Republican candidates have to reintroduce themselves. Who are you? And then most importantly, why are you running? I mean, I got into the race 4 years ago. I thought the defining issue for our state is good paying jobs. We had been stuck in the stall for a long time in terms of jobs. And I thought, given the fiscal crisis, given where we were, this was a chance to turn things around. At this point, we're still near the bottom of the barrel when it comes to job creation. So I think if one of those Republican candidates can grab that issue and show they can do things differently and make sure that Connecticut can get its jobs engine back in gear, that they'll be a winner.
What does fundraising consist of right now, Mr. Griebel? If you can just give us a sense of what these candidates are going through.
Well, you're dialing for dollars. There's no secret to it. You go to a lot of fundraisers, coffees or parties that people will throw for you, and then you spend a lot of time on the phone contacting people to ask them, in the case if you're going for the public financing, to see if they're willing to give you the $100. I think everybody who's announced so far is at least considering the public financing, so you're not necessarily out looking for larger dollars. But there's a lot of time on that, and I just piggyback off what Ned said. It's between now and the convention, you really are trying to convince, and as Governor Malloy had to do back along with Ned in 2010, is convince the party faithful in those town committees that you are the best person, so that as you go into the convention, you have as many delegates locked up as you possibly can. It's critical to go into that convention with as many committed delegates as you can get. So it's a combination of the fundraising, but it's also, as Ned said, convincing people in your party that you're the right person.
And 4 years ago, you were doing just that. How do you go about doing that? Convincing the Democrats to support you in the convention?
Well, since I've lost two conventions by 2-1, you're probably not asking the exact right guy. Being a stiff from Greenwich is not ideal. But what I had to do was go to every single town committee, look them in the eye, tell them who I was, who my family was. They really want to know who you are, that you understand what folks are going through. And as Oz knows, you spend an awful lot of time doing 2 or 3 events, a night if you can, to get out there, and then a really compelling reason why you think you can make a difference in their lives.
And Mr. Griebel, you had a smaller field 4 years ago. The Republicans now have 6 people competing for
Actually,
dollars.
we started with 12, Dennis.
That's right, you did start with 12.
Started with 12.
How difficult is that?
I think and I'll just also say what Ned did. I'm hardly the person to ask since I wasn't successful. But I think I would sort of put the positive spin on this. The thing that's really interesting and what you sort of take from the effort is you get to meet a lot of people you would otherwise not have met. You get a chance to talk to them about what your ideas are. As Ned said, listen to what their issues are. And I think have a better understanding, whether you win or lose, of what this state, what the strengths of the state are, and what the opportunities you have, whoever is elected governor, to really leverage the assets that we have.
Is it more difficult to raise money to run on your own money or to do public financing? Which is more difficult? Who wants to take that?
Well, public financing in lower part of the state is tough, as we talked about when it comes to a race for governor. A lot of the guys in the banks and the financial institutions have relationships with the state, so it's tough to raise. But I wanted to, reinforce what Oz says. It may be a tough slog running, but at the end of the day, I think you're a much better governor for having gone through that process, for having gone to 169 towns. It is broadening, it is ennobling, you feel good about the state, you know it a lot better.
Mark Boughton this week, the Republican mayor of Danbury, who's running for governor, decided to do things a little bit earlier. He picked a running mate already? Good policy or a bad move? What do you think?
I mean, you'd have to ask Mark. I mean, you've read what his rationale is a solid one. There are other people who say you should never do that. I don't think there's a right or a wrong answer. He has a tactical reason to do that, to broaden his reach into the southeastern part of the state, and ideally, to the point on money, tap into some individuals who don't know him, who might now, as a result of identifying the former Mayor Groton, someone who can help open doors. I don't think there's a right or a wrong answer. It depends on who you are as the candidate, what your strengths are, and what your biases are, what you feel is the right thing to do.
Did you men consider it at all when you were running 4 years ago, picking a running mate really early in the game?
I didn't. I was getting to know the other candidates pretty well, and at the end of the day, I got to know Mary Glassman, and she was a wonderful running mate, as Oz says, you know, a compliment to me. Somebody from the upper part of the state who had spent more time in government than I had, so I thought it was a good fit.
It's an awkward dance, too, because 4 years ago, Mark Boughton was Mike Fideli's running mate. Michael Fideli lost, and then he had to run with Tom Foley. So it's one of those things that you sort of have to take that into consideration.
But you don't really run, as you know, Dennis, you don't run as a ticket. I mean, you pick someone, but in the end, the primary and the general election, that's not how we do things. So it helps at a certain level, but you do. I mean, people flipped, as Ned said earlier, when in 2010.
Any thoughts into the mindset of Tom Foley? What do you think he's going to do? Use his own money and raise money that way, or do public financing? He says he's going to do public financing for now. He's at least looking into it.
Well, it'd be obviously a U-turn from where he was 4 years ago, but I think when he saw the legislature up from $3 million to $6 million, how much they gave, to Dan, I think he feels like the money is enough that he's going to probably go the public financing route. I had to make a guess.
Let's talk about the state of the economy right now, and I'll begin with Mr. Griebel. You, of course, run the Metro Hartford Alliance. What are people saying about the economy in our state?
I think the economy, look, it's still unemployment's still unemployment, Dennis, and no matter what GDP growth is or return on the stock market, obviously we've gotten hammered here in the last several days. There's still a very significant unemployment to significant underemployment. And that's still, Ned said this earlier, I know that that's been a focus for the governor. It's clearly going to be it'll be the focal point. Ned said earlier, whoever the Republican candidate is who can convince the party faithful that they're the right person. I think the economy's certainly better. There's no question about that. But job growth, and I don't think this is just a Connecticut issue, it's a national issue. It's better in certain states, there's no question about that. But this is still the single biggest issue that we face. And the other thing that we've talked about, and we'll be actually doing a public forum on this with a number of people, including OPM Secretary Ben Barnes on February 25th, to talk about what the impact of some of our unfunded long-term obligations are and what that does to the ability of the state to invest in things like transportation infrastructure, education. That's a big issue that we hope gets really teed up in this general election between presumably Governor Malloy and the Republican candidate. I think the governor's done a number of things that are very positive, but this issue is not going to go away in the near term.
I think the challenge to Dan on this is going to be our job strategy for the last 3 years has involved, significant tax giveaways to major businesses, big companies, and at the expense of small companies. And small companies create the jobs. I think that's been the engine for the state for the last 30 years, and that ought to be our focus.
And I'll just end with a final yes or no answer. Do you plan on running for office again?
No.
No.
No breaking news.
No.
All right. Oz Griebel, Ned Lamont, we thank you so much for being on the program, and we'll definitely have you on again as we approach the election and the primary. When we come back, a new watchdog for Metro North, a new company setting up shop here in our state, and our flashback. We want to know what you're thinking either on Twitter, Facebook, or my blog. I'll be right back.